Hello Malaysia and welcome to another edition of The Nation. My name is Jared Ratnam and today we're going to take a look at something that's quite a serious matter within Malaysia. It's been happening quite a bit. We've viewed this quite a bit on YouTube and social media. I'm talking about child bullying, and this is becoming rampant in Malaysia and many parts of the world. And why is this happening? How is this linked to psychology? What can be done? We're going to find out more about that shortly. But joining me in the studio right now is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid. She's from the Kuliah of Education, or Kuliah of Education IIUM, or the Educational Psychology. This is what she specializes in, and we're going to be talking about of course child bullying and psychology and child psychology, what we need to know about things like this right here at The Nation. Doctor, very good day to you and thank you very much for taking time off to be with us.
Welcome.
Well, it's a very exciting area that you're in, psychology, and how long have you been in this field?
I think it's way back in 1996, and that was the first time when I started teaching psychology.
Right.
But I begin with teaching and learning. But after completing my doctoral degree, so that's the time when I start focusing on specializing in child psychology and adolescents.
Right. So it was something you found interest in, or you started getting interested in, and you focus on that.
Indeed.
So what's educational psychology as opposed to child psychology? Is it all interlinked?
Yeah, interlinked. If you look at educational psychology, it's all about teaching and learning, and also understanding what is happening in the classroom and how to cope and choosing the right methodology to deal with children and also adults in school. But we can expand that to understand what is happening behind the backdrop. For example, why is the students behaving weirdly in the classroom, for example? So you need to know the background of the child. So it can go back to the early upbringing of the child, and also in psychology we have a term which is called nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture.
Okay. Yes. So it's about genetic versus learning process, and this will have a very strong influence on the child development.
Right. It is about essentially about motivating a child. A lot of this works on motivation, especially when they are in early education or primary school as we know it. But some years ago in America, they started this thing, and every child was number one. Every child were never were thought about learning, winning or losing, but anything you did, you were motivated. And after a while they found that it was not working. Did you do any reading up on this?
Yes, indeed. We always talk about this in my class, because they have this special connotation that it's the birthright of the child to have a high self-esteem, a high self-confidence, in that the real world is not really relate to the child's true ability. Sometimes the child is not really acquiring the right skills and also having the right amount of information, or I would say academic, to sort of ascertain that they are truly qualified to say that I'm good, I'm a winner, I'm going to be the next American Idol, for example. Of which sometimes I would laugh, when I look at this phrase, because they are overly confident.
Overly confident,
yes.
Confident, and more importantly, they get their ambitions and their capabilities mixed up, and that's the scary part, because you get like kids, who'll get like 5 over 100 for the exam, and all they need to hear is "Good job, John. Try again next time." And they found out that it was not working. So how did they work out of the system, to give it to bring more reality into it?
I think that's a realization now that they have to bring these children back to the, I would say, down back to earth, to make them realize that what is their, or maybe I would say they will have to realize what are their true potentials, and working on those potentials and also their interests, not forcing it on them, not making a false belief that they are good in everything, So I think that's a good move, because knowing your own potential, you can move and strive towards the right path, instead of groping through the darkness and not having the right thing at the end of the day.
So with child psychology, you first have to do basic psychology before you kind of move into the area of specialization.
Correct.
Would you call this an area of specialization?
I would say so, because child psychology is a specialized area. Same goes to adolescent, and you study a lot about children from the mother's womb, conception, right up to the gestation period, and then birth, and then the growing up, like from early childhood through adolescent right to adulthood and dying, of course. And all these are specialized area. Same goes to adolescents, that is part of it, you know. And aging is another part, that is the later part in your life, understanding why old folks are not able to not able to hear properly, and not able to remember things because of the sickness and stuff like that. So these are all specialized areas. And
so from the time you started psychology to now, were there any milestone developments or major developments within the field?
I would
of
say
psychology?
So. Yeah, I
Can you
think
walk us through this?
that's a big development in that area, because I think now the Malaysian society are aware of what is happening to our youth, our children, and parents are quite ready, you know, with all this knowledge and also skills available, either by the government or maybe I would say the private sector. They, for example, the preschool programs that we have in Malaysia, it's catering for the needs of the children, tailor-made in such a way that you can specialize on certain skills, you know, like for example, if the child is good in music, then you can go and move along in their life by focusing on this particular area. And same goes to if you're good in academic or sciences, for example, you can always select and mold your child. Of course, you have to look at what kind of potential your child has, you know. So those are the things. I think that's a big milestone in that.
Right, so ascertaining the child's potential is something that needs some experience in it.
Correct.
You need to be able to, pinpoint what, not what exactly, but about which area your son or daughter is good at, and what they would be able to improve on. But that said, with of course being a parent, there's no handbook or guide to say, this is how to be a parent. You learn as you move along. And do you think that parents need to understand a little bit of psychology when they deal with kids?
Indeed. I think
basic psychology.
Yeah, the 21st century parent needs to have knowledge on especially child psychology, early childhood education. Well, they can always read up, you know, the website is all there, the computer is all there, on a desktop, you can just browse, surf for information, and I think you should be able. And we also have classes, you know, like for example, when you're going through a mother to be going through the gestation period, I think the hospitals are catering for this, and also classes conducted from the religious point of view and also from the psychological point of view. I think a lot, you know, so you just need to have some effort put in, you know, to understand what is going on.
You know, the basic psychology that we read over the internet, they say that, you know, whatever a child experiences, a bad experience at a very young age will carry into his or her adult life. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Whatever, this is what we call the impact of parenting styles in homes. It has a very devastating, it can be positive and also devastating effect on the child in later years. You know, for example, if they are beaten up, especially if, you know, with regard to domestic violence in homes, child battering, wife battering, you know. So children, you know what, whenever they experience all this, they will repeat the same pattern as how they have experienced when they were a child. You know, so this will be repeated when they go to school, and when they get this opportunity to sort of show off and control the situation, which I call empowering the situation, you know, certain child will go overboard in a way of saying that if they get a chance to bully other people, they will do so.
So this is where we make bullies in schools, kids who've had bad experiences. But can you diagnose that? Can you, when you talk to a kid or when you talk to a teenager, can you go back and see what happened in the past that's making him or her like that?
Yeah, it's possible, because nowadays we have what we call as clinical psychology, where a psychiatrist would sort of diagnose what is happening, and there are certain instrument that we can use to diagnose behavior and also his thinking pattern, you know. So having all this instrument, I think it helps the psychology to sort of detect what is happening. And we also have therapy to help the child to sort of reshape their behavior. This is what we call behavior modification.
We're going to delve a little bit more into child psychology later, and of course child bullying, a little something we want to further get some information about. But Let's just go back a little bit and look at the educational psychology of what you do and the Kuliah of Education at IIUM. You know, how do you develop upcoming psychologists within UIA?
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a program which is called Masters of Education in Educational Psychology. So in this particular program, we have certain modes where students can do full thesis, and the other one is thought courses plus thesis, and also there's another program whereby you do thought courses and also a mini research, you know, on certain aspect of psychology. So students, when they have completed the courses that they have taken, it's a class-like kind of thing. So maybe they have like 4 or 5 months to complete their thesis or maybe directed research. So this is the time when they start thinking about issues in psychology. It could be in the classroom, it could be in the home, it could be just the individual child, or maybe they can do it qualitatively, you know, or maybe quantitatively.
Right.
So it's a survey.
Within UIA, how many students are there concentrating on psychology or taking up psychology?
I don't have the exact figure, but I think it's quite a big pool compared to other programs besides leadership and administration. So this is the next, I would say, a big pool of students, you know, enroll for this program.
Right.
So I don't have the exact because I'm not in the.
So there's a big pool, but
yeah.
but is there a process that they go through where you ascertain if they're good enough or if they should be taking up psychology? Not good enough, but if it's something suited for them or to
yes,
them.
normally we have to look at the basic degree that they have done before. Anybody can actually enroll for educational psychology. It's not really a problem as long as you have the interest and you're keen enough to sort of attend classes, give your best shot, and do things well, you know. So there's no restriction whatsoever.
Right. I know. Do you think people need to have certain people have the gift for psychology, where
I think so.
they don't follow standard rules, they can just feel.
Yes.
Do you think
I agree.
I
agree. Yes. And I observe this among my students.
Right.
They can sort of, I would say, relate to issues, you know, either in the classroom or maybe some of them are volunteers. You know, I would say we have refugees, lots of Rohingya refugees, and they volunteer for this program to become teachers. And I do have friends who actually assist for critical situation. So these are lecturers, and also students are recruited, you know, to sort of help the lecturers to do this. Especially, you remember when we have these airplanes crash, you know.
Right.
So they went to KLIA to help I would say the families, you know,
the grieving families,
grieving families, to help them with the emotions, you know.
No, so these students went there, and what did they come back with? And I mean, I'm sure they came back with some kind of information.
Yeah, some kind of experience. I would say first-hand experience, because these are field work, and then these are real specimens, you know. So I would say it's a very quality situation, even though it's quite sad because of the grieving, you know. But then you don't get this anywhere, you know. So it has to be the field work, and then you feel it, and then you can experience it, and you can relate to these situations. So beside educational psychology, we in the department we also have another program which is called counseling. So these are the counseling students, and also the psychology students can also participate in any events, you know.
So saying if you're taking up counseling, if counseling is your forte, is counseling separate from psychology?
I wouldn't say it's a separate issue, because you need to know stuff in psychology in order to do well in counseling, because counseling and psychology can never be separated.
Right.
You know, they're like husband and wife.
So schools are now employing a lot of counselors, and within a school or within the staff body of a school, there's always some form of some sort of a counselor to help the kids out. So what kind of training should these counselors have?
We have these people coming for the masters in in counseling. So they have knowledge in terms of skills, therapies, you know, like therapy how to deal with children having problems, you know. So we have like art therapy, play therapy kind of thing. So our students are taught on how to handle children, but it's being done in a very subtle manner.
Right.
So you need to understand what is going on in the child. And of course, children cannot speak, they cannot talk, you know, they can only express themselves. So you use art, you use play therapy to sort of get the things from the children, you know, but in a very subtle, but it takes longer time, of course.
Right.
So these children are thought to do that.
Well, it's very interesting that, and there's a lot to cover with regards to child psychology and, of course, bullying and how to prevent bullying in schools. We're going to come back and find out more about that shortly. Joining me in the studio today is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid. She's from the Kuliah of Education at IIUM, and she delves a lot into educational psychology. We'll be coming back with that shortly right here at The Nation. Stay with us.
Isu semasa dan terkini industri kreatif tanah air. Perkembangan muzik tempatan. Lensa anak seni. Aksi layar perak. Tanpa gosip dan sensasi, semuanya disisipkan selama setengah jam dalam Tedi Sini, bukan sekadar hiburan. Setiap Sabtu, jam 12.30 tengah hari, hanya di Bernama TV.
Kavita, Meling, dah set ke belum?
Sikit je lagi, Puan.
Apa menu kita hari ini?
Semua menu sihat. Ikan bakar, sup ayam, sayur-sayuran. Banyaklah.
Puan, banyaknya guna minyak. Bahayakan kesihatan lah.
Betul lah macam ni. Saya dah kurangkan separuh dari biasa ni.
Cuba rasa ni. Sedap tak?
Biar kurang masin, jangan lebih.
Betul tu. Kita kena kurangkan minyak, gula,
Garam dan santan dalam masakan. Barulah ramai pelanggan datang ke kedai kita.
Semuanya
sihat belaka.
Menyelami realiti, menjejaki masa, meninjau peristiwa, paparan kronikal kembara kehidupan, pelbagai keunikan juga pengalaman menarik. Segalanya disorotkan selama setengah jam dalam channel bernama setiap Ahad jam 9.30 malam hanya di Bernama TV.
Hello and welcome back to The Nation. I'm Jared Ratnam, and today at The Nation we talk about child bullying and psychology, or child psychology. Joining us in the studio is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid. She's from the Kuliah of Education at IIUM. She's joining us this morning to give us some information as to what child bullying is all about, what can be done, and also child psychology and what parents and teachers should know. Well, when we talk about child psychology, where do you begin talking about it or giving out information about it? What's the most important thing one must know about child psychology?
Okay, we can always begin from home. You know, when you're about to become parents, you need to have some kind of information. You need to have skills to become good parents. So this knowledge will have to be derived from child psychology. So it will tell you a lot about how to handle babies, how to raise them right, and also what type of education and skill would be required to raise these children so that they would develop, I would say, normally, you know, and they would be able to socialize normally, and they know how to handle themselves normally in society. So it comes from the home. And who's responsible for that? I would say the parents.
Right.
Yeah. And also,
there must be a definition of what functioning normally is in society. You know, how do you define that?
Well, when I say that you don't go against the norm, you know how to sort of bring about yourself. And this is about rules and regulation. You don't go against the rules and regulation, but it doesn't mean that you always have to say yes to everything. But I would say that you understand what is going on, you know how to behave, and you know how to bring about yourself. So this is what we call the socializing process. So any normal child in their right mind would be able to adhere to all these rules and regulation. But a child with disabilities, will not be able to do that. So it takes more time for parents and teachers to educate them and tell them how to behave and tell them the do's and don'ts and the rights and wrongs. So for a normal child, it takes shorter time for them to understand.
Right.
So it has to begin from home, and then it will continue when they go to school. So the teacher is next to the parent to help them understand what is going on and how to socialize effectively in society.
A while ago, I watched this movie, and of course, there was a lot of flack, or people didn't quite like the movie, and it was getting bad reviews, not by the public, but by people within the industry. And it was by Brenda Denker. It's called Gado, and it talks about kids in school and how racism creeps its way into school, because some of them at home hear their parents going on about certain things,
I agree.
that sticks in their head, and they bring it to school, and that's where the problems start when it comes to racism within school. Is that true? I mean, that observation
I
by
agree,
Brenda
I
Denker.
agree. Because whatever you say in the home is actually information that will be registered by your child in the house, and they believe in what you say, and when they go to school, they will say exactly the same thing, utter the same thing, and they will not be able to sort of distinguish whether whatever their parents say is actually correct or there's some weightage to that. So they just say it out when the time is right. Whenever they get into fights, they argue with somebody or in a quarrel, they will say all these things because they believe that what their parents say at home is actually true.
See, I teach kids martial arts, and when I teach children, I mean, it's about growing up and having fun and doing some exercise first and being focused. That's the most important thing. And a lot of parents come and ask me, or they put this question to you. They say, can you teach my son or daughter how to protect his or herself? And I find that really, I'm taken aback when
challenging.
No, it's not challenging, but to say it, to help them, can you teach my son how to fight back? So if I teach him how to punch and kick, chances are he won't be able to differentiate who he needs to punch and kick. So you say, if someone gives you a hard time, beat them or punch them. So saying if his sister gives him a hard time, he's going to punch the sister. So children cannot differentiate, and it's our work to help them understand these things. So how can we start at a very young age at home?
How much, right? Okay, I think that has a lot to do with...
What can we do as parents?
I think that has a lot to do first and foremost with cognitive maturity of a child, so they see, they do, and they demonstrate whatever they see, So I like to quote Bandura's theory, whereby he said, children learn best through observation, and they imitate whoever is the role model closer to them. So I think that's quite true, So back to your question, you were asking me how to best educate them. Now, I think we have to, we have culture. This is the Asian culture, so there are certain rules and regulations that we have to observe. So teaching them martial art definitely will have to be self-defense, right? If you are being attacked, but how do you decide what kind of attack is actually or maybe require you to sort of fight back and to defend yourself? So we really have to sit down and think about the moments, of perhaps I would say the situations that actually requires them to fight back. For example, if it is physical contact, how much of physical contact is allowed? Is it on a pat on the head, or is it on any I would say non-permissible area on your body, or what? So you really have to identify the areas that actually allows them to fight back and defend themselves.
Right. We're now coming to a time when even a touch is becoming so dangerous. We just spoke about this off the airwaves. We talked about what's a good touch and a bad touch. A while ago, someone from WAO talked to me about it and told me that when you're teaching kids, you need to make them understand the difference between a good touch and a bad touch. Because most of us, have grown up having an uncle or some friend who used to come and, hello boy, good girl, and you felt something then. You were not wrong as a child, children feel it at that point. And now, with all these things that we have around us, life is getting harder.
harder.
It's becoming more, not harder, but more complex, like you said. And teaching kids like this, things like this are essential skills.
Right.
Can this be done? Should this be done at home or in schools?
I think it takes both, because I've already mentioned just now that there must be continuity. So we can begin in home. We can educate our children.
Right.
Well, actually, what they can do with their brothers and what they cannot do with their brothers, and also cousins. Because I think you have heard of incest, right? Incest is adults forcing to have a sexual relationship with children who are innocent. They don't know what is a good touch and what is a bad touch. So those things happen in Malaysia, and we have lots of these cases which go unreported. So we need to educate our children what is permissible, what is a permissible touch, and what is not a permissible touch. So and then this will be extended to school, whereby the teacher can actually have group briefing with the children, so that children will understand what they can do, how do they dress, and how much is allowed for them to communicate with their the opposite gender. So I think it can be done. Actually, it can be done.
But like you said, it takes the parent and the school to work hand in hand to make this happen. Is enough being done in early education or in primary education to give kids this awareness?
I think it has to be continuous again. We shouldn't stop there, because the media can...
In the first place, is it happening?
What do you mean?
In
schools,
in
early childhood. I think now they are doing it because of what happened, in our society. Children are being molested, children are being, incest cases are being reported and all that. So I think they are doing it. But to what extent is still questionable, because I think it has to be a nationwide effort, and then I think children will be safe. Otherwise, I would say it's just mere talking here on television, and other people are not doing it. So I think we have to give serious thought about this, because children are our future generation and also the future stakeholder of this country. So we have to protect them. So we have to give them the best education and also information on how to handle themselves, bring about themselves in society.
So, but with you saying that, here's the flip side of that. To make this happen, you need teachers who are well trained. Teachers. I mean, I'm not saying that our teachers aren't well trained, but are they being trained in the right areas? This is the more important thing now in early education. Okay, you learn basic syllabus and how to teach basic syllabus, but in primary education, it takes more than that. It takes knowing the child, just looking at the child. And in the past week, we read a couple of stories where teachers found something amiss with the student, and they reported it to the police, and they've already found a case of a child being starved at home, suffering from malnutrition because her dad locks up in the house. That was a great work by a teacher, keeping the eye out. So things like this, can it be thought in psychology or basic psychology to teachers?
I think we should. This is a must. I would say that these are the challenges, for teachers and also educators in the 21st century, especially now. When life is becoming so, I would say, it is quite difficult, to understand who are the good person around, who are the bad person. There's no way that you can identify this, So you need to educate the children, you need to educate the teachers, and also you need to educate parents as well. So it takes a lot of parties to sit down together and think about parameters or ways and means of how to work these things out effectively.
But if you were to be put in charge of a school and say, look, you need to come up with a syllabus, doctor, to for the teachers, for them to be able to understand kids and their problems, what would be the first thing you'd do?
I would first identify the school counselors and as well as the teachers.
They need to have certain traits.
We need to teach them what are the red flags, the attributes that we need to identify, how to handle these children effectively using all the counseling techniques and all that, and also how to handle their emotions, how to handle, how to help them cope. With the aftermath, because children are so fragile, so they can just simply do anything, maybe they become suicidal and all that, so we don't want that to happen.
We've got quite a few areas to cover today right here at The Nation. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about ECE, adolescence, gerontology. That's something we want to deal with in the end. I will tell you what that is. Of course, what we want to delve into a lot when we come back is cyberbullying and, of course, bullying in school. We're going to find out more about that right here at The Nation. Joining us today is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid from UIA. She is a psychologist and she's here to help us out. We'll come back with more information shortly. Stay with us.
Halo, apa kabar pemirsa? Salam dari Jakarta. Sebuah program kerjasama Kantor Berita Indonesia Antara dengan Kantor Berita Malaysia bernama kembali hadir menjumpai Anda.
Sedar tak kita tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, keadaan iklim yang tak menentu sekarang ni. Perubahan iklim meningkatkan kejadian kemarau, jerebu, banjir dan ia menyumbang kepada perubahan iklim yang berlaku secara drastik. Inilah dia faktor-faktornya. Yang pertama, asap dari kenderaan. Yang kedua, penebangan dan pembakaran hutan. Yang ketiga, pembebasan asap dari industri perkilangan. Dan yang keempat, pelupusan sisa buangan. Ini usaha yang Pak Abu buat, iaitu yang pertama, menanam pokok. Yang kedua, mengurangkan atau tidak menggunakan beg plastik. Yang ketiga, mengasingkan bahan buangan. Yang keempat, mengitar semula bahan buangan. Dan yang kelima, memilih barangan dari bahan kita semula. Ada banyak lagi usaha yang boleh kita lakukan. Antaranya, kurangkan pemanduan kereta persendirian dan banyakkan penggunaan kenderaan awam.
Anda adalah sebahagian daripada penyelesaiannya.
Menongkah batasan masa, mengupas isu semasa, menjadi saluran pelbagai suara. Segalanya baru dan benar di Berita Bernama TV.
Welcome back to The Nation. I'm Jared Ratnam, and today at The Nation we're talking about child bullying, child psychology. Joining me in the studio is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid from UIA. Now, with child bullying, there's things parents need to know. A child who's usually bullied and a child who is a bully. Now, how do we deal with this? We're going to talk about later. But child bullying in Malaysia, why do we suddenly see so many of these things happening within Malaysia? You know, it's like something that's trending at the moment. You know, every time you go onto YouTube, there's some kid who's being bullied in some asrama somewhere or some hostel somewhere or in some school. Why is this happening? Why do you think it's happening?
Okay, there are many things that I can say or maybe predict why this thing is happening with respect, especially in schools. Now, if you look at boarding school or maybe public school, boarding school is something that is quite, I would say, is an institution that actually only selected students are sent to this school.
Right.
But there's always a tradition whereby during orientation week that they will have to go some kinds of ritual and rites, you know. For example, to sort of acquire respect from the junior. So they will have to go through some kind of rigorous training, for example, singing out loud, doing all kinds of funny things, you know, that requires them to sort of respect their seniors. So there is a repetitive
This is the orientation week.
Orientation week.
It's I like to call it the bullying week. I don't know why we call it orientation week.
Right. So so when this event takes place, you know, the senior will always ask a certain specific junior to do something for them.
Right.
For example, wash their shoes, wash their clothes, or maybe you have to give me your iron, for example, your kettle. So this happened in Seremban. So when the the junior refused to give whatever that is considered as their belonging, so that is an act of violations of seniority. So when they do that, maybe the senior has been treated in such a way in the past that he'll be kicked, he will be punished for his being obstinate, you know, and his refusal to give whatever that belongs to him. So he repeats that on the junior. So this is like a repetitive patterns, you know, and sometimes it is mild in nature. But at certain times, some youngsters are a little bit emotional. They go beyond, or they went about, you know.
Right.
So this is when physical action took place. They beat up. And in those days, you know, there's no handphone for you to record anything in the dormitories.
Right.
But nowadays they have this, you know.
So things haven't quite changed. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
we've got facilities to record it.
Correct,
That's why we
yes.
see a lot of it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I remember back in the 80s too. It used to be like that. You used to see
Yes, yeah.
boys get bullied, and you used to have gang fights outside
Right,
school.
right.
And you know, with things like this, they say that in a school, a child who goes to school needs to develop good memories, start making their lifetime friends, and start interacting, having what you call it, their places in the world. They find
Right.
all these things out in school, but it doesn't seem to be that way now. You know, going to school is, you know, merely surviving for some kids.
Right,
And
right.
what's the when you read about all these cases of children being bullied, what's the worst you've seen or come across or even read about?
Well, I think it was reported in the news that we have a couple of deaths, right? And a couple of youngsters were apprehended by the police and put on trial because of the death. And I think they went overboard, you know, in this case, whereby they couldn't control their emotions. They couldn't control their, I would say, it's about their emotion, whereby they cannot control themselves, and they hit real hard. And I guess it's unintentional, you know, when they did that. It was unintentional, but they really hit them hard. I mean, the victim hard, and the person died. So when this thing happened, we have to educate our youngsters to understand what are the limitations of socializing with other people in the dormitories, for example. Now, in public school, the same thing also happened.
Right.
You have the case of bully when other people refuse to respect them. Now, in psychology, we call this acceptance and rejection of peer. So when you don't initiate well with the group of adolescents, and you don't follow the norms, so you are considered as an outcast.
Right.
So you will be seen as a prey. You know, so a prey will be tailed by the groups wherever they go. So in every nook and corner of the school, for example, you know, which is quite secluded, so you'll be the prime target. You'll be beaten up, or maybe in the toilet. You know, they do all kinds of things to these so-called victims, or maybe I would say prey. So education is necessary here.
Right.
We need to put some, I would say, some information in the mind of adolescents these days. But there are vast difference in terms of behavior and also understanding among adolescents in school, especially the public school. You know, they need to understand the rights, the limitation, the bounds, the boundaries, and also what should be done when you're angry, and how much can you sort of communicate your anger to other people. So this is actually necessary and also important for youngsters to acquire in school.
So that can be taught in school, yeah? And with of course, saying things like this, that youngsters can be taught these things in school. This once again goes back to the role of the teacher and the school, and of course the syllabus. I mean, it should be included, or it should be somehow seeped into the syllabus, little things like this that can help a youngster understand, because they don't know any better. You know, but you know, that would be the bigger problems. Coming back to the youngster itself and the understanding of the youngster. See, now the child who's being bullied, of course the parents sympathize with them, empathize with them, and of course try their best to do something. But with the children who bully, sometimes parents are in denial. Oh, my son's not a bully, my daughter is not a bully. Yeah, and where do we start understanding, or how do we start understanding the situation?
There's no specific indicator, right? For example, a bird has feathers and claws and beak and all that, you know, so specifics, yeah? But for a bully, there's no way that you can tell. They may be angelic at home, you know, like an angel, you know, lovable at home, and there's no way that you can tell that your son is a big bully in school. So maybe sometimes a spot check in the room, inviting friends, you know, close friend to the home, you know, getting to know whom they mix with, you know, so it would be a good idea. Or maybe sometime maybe you drop by at the school to find out how your child is performing in school would be also another great idea. We don't have to wait until you get urgent call from school saying that your son is involved in a brawl, or maybe a fight with another child.
Okay,
you know,
saying if I have a kid now, okay, let's use me as an example. I have a kid, and my kid is bullying a few kids in school, or is a big bully in school, and he comes home, he's a normal kid, he's a good kid at home, and I get to hear from school or I mean through friends that my kid is bullying. He's of course causing a lot of pain to a lot of boys at school.
Right.
What should a parent do at that point? Because the first thing I say, no, I mean he's great at home, I don't see him being like that. That's our first reaction.
Right.
What can be done more than that? If I find out, so if I hear someone telling me, or if I find out from the school that my son is bullying other kids, how do I react to this, and how do I work with something like this?
Okay. First thing first, we have to remember that there shouldn't be any physical. Don't get physical. Don't touch your son in a very physical manner. What you need to do is perhaps you have a heart-to-heart talk with your son. When you touch his soft spot, you must go somewhere first. Maybe invite him to a place whereby you can have coffee, or maybe ask him to eat what favorite food that he would like to have for the day, and go out from the home, not to have any other siblings watching this event, So probably that's the time when you sort of get him to open up a little bit. You have a problem, for example, be soft-spoken, gentle with him or her, and slowly, maybe at first he wouldn't open up, he wouldn't talk, but it will take several days to do this, maybe months, we don't know for sure. But as parent myself, I've done this before. I have bigger children, so this would be some of my, I wouldn't say tricks, but I would say efforts that we can actually do to sort of communicate with our children effectively. So we don't have to end up hitting them or maybe punishing them severely. It can be done in a very subtle manner. So you have to talk your heart out to your child, get them to say what is it that they are not satisfied about, things in the home.
Yeah, but getting them to actually, pour their hearts out is one thing, but also having them spin circles around you is another, because kids are really smart these days. I mean, they're smarter than, what we were back then. They are 150 times smarter than us. Some of them are not street savvy, but they're smart. They read a lot, they go through a lot of articles, they do a lot of speed reading, and they acquire a lot of information, and they know how to use this against people like us. So they say, oh no, they're going to try to talk to us, so what we should do is just pacify them, and they know they can do, some kids know they can do this. So how do you work if you have a feeling that your kid is trying to suck up to you, or is just running circles around you?
All right. Now, you must remember that we have already got this information from the school, right? So probably the next step is to sort of break the ice, tell them, this is what I get from the school, and can you please explain what is happening, So probably your son will be again, trying to defend himself by saying that, oh, I'm not at fault, he's the one who started all first, and stuff like that. But probably, the next thing is to bring your child to school, perhaps, to sort of confront, it's not a confrontation whatsoever, but to sort of have what call that an eye-to-eye or heart-to-heart talk with the school counselor. I believe counselors can do a lot, to sort of ease the situation and help you out with the behavioral problem. So you have all the facts, reported by the school, indicating that your son has been involved in so and so. So what do you have to say about this, for example? But we don't have to shout at our child.
Right. Yeah. So it can be dealt with without, of course,
don't have to be
being
punitive.
strict with the child.
We don't have to be punitive.
I mean, for parents who go down that road, or for those of us who look at the road of disciplining a child, what are your thoughts about this?
I know some of them would be very physical, they will hit and slap the child.
When I used to go to school, the parents would come
straight away and slap the son.
Slap the son, or they'll give the teacher a carte blanche. The teacher, next time, give him a good whacking. That's how we were dealt with in school, and not many of us turned out to be horrible. But having said that, with all these talking to children, the next concern is they're going to learn this trend, and they're going to be able to work through this problem by just making us look like total idiots, Some kids have the ability to do that, and they test your patience every so often. So with knowing this, moving forward and finding that line between disciplining and also speaking to that child, how do you do that?
Okay. Now you have to look at the severity of the child's behavior and also problem. Now, if you think that the child can be dealt with at the school level, I think fine enough for you to send this child to the counselor. But if you feel that this child is having some kind of behavior disorder, you need an expert to do that.
Right.
So you need to consult some kind of specialist to sort of help a child to sort of modify his behavior. So that's what I believe in, because reference is really to an expert or maybe a specialist in behavior modification is necessary here, because we need to screen what is wrong with children who misbehave in school, who went physical, for example. You need to understand what is going on. We can never tell, because a child, for example, we had this discussion about manic depression, about being bullied.
Is that still in the area of child psychology, or does it move on to psychiatry now?
No, it is both, because when you deal with child psychology, that thing comes together with that, because I've already spoken about nature versus nurture. Genetic is something that you can never deny, or maybe you cannot stop it from happening. But if you have knowledge about it, you can do something to sort of minimize the impact of, I would say, genetic effect on the child. For example, if you have this in a family tree and you have knowledge about it, you can prevent it from worsening.
Right.
So that's what we can do. But if you just just deny, in a great denial, and you don't want to do anything about it, I think things are going to be worse.
We're going to take another break, and we're going to come back and find out a little bit more about child bullying, child psychology, and we want to touch a little bit on gerontology before we end this show. Of course, with us in the studio today is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid. She's from UIA, and her area of speciality is educational psychology. She's a psychologist from UIA. We're going to come back just after a break and give you more information right here at The Nation. Stay with us.
Terima kasih. Sama-sama. Terima kasih. Sama-sama. Sama-sama.
Satu bangsa, satu Malaysia. Menongkah batasan masa, mengupas isu semasa, menjadi saluran pelbagai suara, segalanya baru dan benar di Berita Bernama TV.
Hello and welcome back to The Nation. We're currently talking about child bullying and, of course, child psychology. Joining me in the studio is Dr. Siti Rafia Abdul Hamid from UIA. Now, this thing about having an open-ended conversation with the child, I'm not a big believer of this. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, sometimes I have to take the middle path, whereby whatever that I've learned, and also put that into practice. I do embrace both,
Right.
I believe in disciplining my children, whereby we have to be a little bit physical sometimes in order to teach them. But at the same
whack
time,
on the head.
yeah, they need that sometimes, when they go overboard. So sometimes you need to communicate with them, especially when they have already reached adolescence. And we need to understand they need respect from us. So I would embrace both. I wouldn't say that I just go punitive and hit them hard, all the time. When they were small, maybe perhaps we have to teach them that, and we have to embrace that method.
I mean, disciplining a child and abusing a child are two different things, and I think we've got that intertwined, and now we come up with these things. It's a very Western belief that you need to have an open-ended conversation with a child, but I've seen how some of these open-ended conversations have gone, and what the parents end up being. So it's something which, while it's good, I'm not a strong believer of it. I'm not saying that it's bad, but I'm not a strong believer of it. As Asians, we do have our own values, our own within our different various cultures. We have different ways of dealing with different things, and being Asian or being Malaysian, where do we draw the line between getting information like this, open-ended conversations, and what we do? Sometimes we feel like we're bad parents. Oh, I'm being a bad parent because I'm not having an open-ended conversation with my child.
Well, I guess
finding that balance.
The balance. You have to strike a balance. Between what is, again, going back to, it boils down to being what is considered as permissible by the culture, by the religion, and also what is considered as something that is acceptable by the Westerners. In psychology, I guess, for example, we cannot go physical.
Right.
We always have to touch the emotions of the child, and then you have to raise and mold them right in terms of behavior. What do you call that? Modifications. For example, but at certain times of our life, a child may go overboard. You let them to do that, or how do you react to that situation? Now, if your child has no respect for adults, for example, shouting, cursing, for example, you always pick this up because these days parents would send their children to educare, preschool, kindergartens and all that. So they mix around with all types of children, and these children brought their own baggage to the classroom, So whatever the children hears at home, whatever the child hears at home, they would always repeat that, when they're angry, when they communicate with other people. So it can be good and it can also be bad. So if our child pick this up from the kindergarten and bring it to the house and start cursing their siblings, So this is when you have to step in and you have to tell them this is wrong.
Right.
If they repeat again and they refuse to listen to you, so I guess we have to be a little bit physical, but you don't have to hurt them. Maybe a little bit of pinch and there, they would listen to you.
You know how we think of the open house concept as one of Malaysia's very own, that within different festivities in Malaysia, all of us have an open house, whether it's Christmas, Raya, Chinese New Year, Diwali, everyone has an open house. And back then when we used to follow or go with dad and mom to visit Uncle Ali's house, the adults will be having a conversation, we'll listen to the adults first, and then the kids will make their way out on their own and play. But today, even with this open house culture that we have, I see kids who are going for an open house with their iPad and iPhones, and they're like this, they're like this all the time. And every time their parents tell them, "Can you stop playing with that?" they look up at their parents like, "Are you mad?" No, I'm in the midst of a game here. And it only tells me that they have got a stronghold. I mean, they have got control of their parents. Parents don't have control of them. I mean, it's totally outright rude to go to someone's house and be looking at your phone. It's like taking a book then, okay, y'all talk, I'm going to read a book. So, dealing with stuff like this, although it may look very trivial or nothing that's very urgent, but this habit will develop into something bad. The child will start isolating himself, maybe become someone who's bullied, or becomes an aggressor, or someone who bullies in school. It starts with simple things like this, or at least that's what I believe. So with dealing with stuff like this, how do you find that balance?
Well,
as a parent
okay,
personally.
as a parent. Now, I would always tell my children that this is what I see in my own home. Like for example, people be busy at the dinner table or maybe on the sofa set, doing this, swiping, looking at things, and what I see is isolation. You're in your own world. You hardly or rarely talk to your sibling, for example. But I would say the level of severity is not there yet. But sooner or later, when people become so engrossed with what they are doing, their iPad, their handphones and all that, they don't communicate anymore with their sibling, what more with their friends, and also with the teachers in school, in the classroom, perhaps in the lab, they would be busy browsing the website and all that, not listening to the teacher. Right. And I call this rude, because beside communication, we are supposed to be attentive in the classroom. At home, we are supposed to communicate at least a few, maybe 1 hour or so, quality time with the family. But when you do that, it takes away all the time.
Right.
Well, don't tell me this is 21st century, you have to be like this and behave like that. So I still call for some kind of decent communication. And we have to talk to our children about how much they can focus on their iPad whatsoever or handphone these days, and of course they have to talk to their siblings and also pay respect, due respect to adults, especially when you're attending Raya Do or Christmas Do whatsoever.
Well, when the child loses the ability to communicate with people, this is when problems starts creeping up into their lives. And that for me is the scariest part. Before we let you go, I mean, your take-home message to all of us who are parents or who are parents to be, and those of us who have to deal with kids on a daily basis, what would be your take-home message to us today?
Effective communication is very important.
So if there's one thing we need to learn is effective. If we don't know effective communication, it's good that we read up on it.
Yes, not only read up but also attend courses that actually can tell you what is effective communication. Now, it doesn't mean that you stay 1 hour or maybe 3 hours with a child at the dinner table or maybe in the lounge. That message will be transpired to them. Even half an hour or maybe 10 minutes of communication, effective communication with your child. Some messages will be transferred to the other side or to the other party, whereby they would understand that, oh yeah, with my parents I will have to pay attention, listen to them, have respect, for adults and stuff like that. Because I'm living in a culture that I have to socialize, I have to listen and pay due respect to adults, and also respect other people. Same respect will be returned to me.
Right.
So in one word, I would say that effective communication is very important among parent and children at home, and teacher and students in school.
On that note, we'd like to thank Dr. Siti Rafia from UIA for joining us today. Of course, there's so much more we wanted to talk about. We wanted to delve into gerontology. We wanted to talk about her research material. She's done behavioral attributes and among adolescents or among Malaysian adolescents. That's a little something we want to talk about when we have time on another show right here on Bernama TV. On that note, you have a great day ahead. We'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more for you right here at The Nation, and also our other program which is called Bernama Today, which comes on every day at 8 a.m. Thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you.